Hey guys, what is up? How are you? It's been a minute. I didn't stream last week. I know. I try to stream when I can, of course, but I didn't preach last Sunday, and so, I didn't have a specific need to stream, and then not only that, I was struggling to make time for it. Very, very tough. But I am preaching this week, and not only that, I'm working on a paper. So you can see here, my professor for church history is Sean Lucas, and he wrote a book called For a Continuing Church, The Roots of the PCA. And I finished it today. So what I was thinking was I could work on my paper a little bit, and I could also work on the sermon a little bit. So I called it a church history paper and sermon prep ADHD stream. Okay, so we'll be jumping back and forth. Whatever strikes my fancy. That's my plan. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I hope you guys are doing well today. Happy, Monday? Happy Monday? Yes, happy Monday. And here are the requirements for the paper. I've got them over here. It says, 5-page response paper for the continuing church. In the first half, introduce your paper. Mention who wrote the book, his background, his thesis, etc. In section 1, answer the following questions in 2 to 3 pages. Citing relevant examples, who were the significant figures and organizations? What were the major issues in the formation of the PCA? Section 2, answer the following questions. What do you make of the story? Is it heroic, troubling, a mixture? In your opinion, how does the story of the PCA's origins continue to shape the denomination today? So I'm already on a 5-page response paper. Since there's 2 sections, I think I'm going to put 2 pages towards the section 1 because I'm going to be honest, the significant figures and all that type of stuff doesn't interest me as much. And then I think I'll put 3 pages towards section 2 because that seems more interesting to me, right? This is more my opinion. Should be fairly easy to go on for 3 pages about that. Honestly, decent book. I am not Presbyterian, okay? So when he said, oh, you're going to be reading a 300-page book I wrote, 330 pages almost, on the history of the PCA, I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is not going to be relevant. And in some measure, it wasn't. But I will say this. It was interesting. Just to see all the theological controversies they get into and stuff like that. Very, very fascinating. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. And that's what I'm going to do. So let me go to the camera. And what I'm going to do here while I do that is I'm going to bring up my Word document without doxing myself. Boom, boom. Okay. And we'll put that dead center. And let's see. Okay, dead center. All right, looking good. And let me just save it right now. File. And all I'm doing is just getting this set up so where when I start typing, it's not going to be getting in the way. So, which class is this? Church history. There we go. Church history 2. And we'll put final paper. Okay. Well, I don't want to title it that. Put for a continuing church paper, and then I'll just put my last name on there. So my professor knows who did it. Okay, that should be good. Cool. All right, so, and let me just shuffle this down a tad because I want to be able to set it up how he desires. Okay, that looks good. Let's go back here now. And so I think this is going to be pretty straightforward, honestly. It's only 5 pages, and it's a response paper. It's not like a research paper. I don't have to reference other sources, anything like that. I just get to go through, summarize my thoughts on the book. I mean, that shouldn't be hard, right? Man, this Wow, this new mouse I got has a, oh, look at that. Look how quickly it can scroll. Anyway, interesting. So yeah, we'll go through that. And I can write that. And then I'll also work on my sermon. So we'll do a little bit of both. Let me do a new note. And I'll also start a sermon prep note. Been a minute since I preached, since I didn't preach last Sunday. What's up, Jedi? I just joined. What topic are we on? So I am currently just setting up, but I'm going to be working on my paper, which is on, for a continuing church, the roots of the Presbyterian Church in America, or PCA. Okay. And so I'm going to be working on my paper on this. Should be relatively straightforward. And then the other thing is, for my sermon prep, I'm in the book of Hebrews. And so I want to set up to be prepping for Hebrews. Last time I did practical steps of perseverance. Paul preached last Sunday. So this upcoming Sunday, I'm going to be doing a two-parter on Hebrews 12, 18 to 29. That's a large section. Hebrews 12, 18 to 29, part 1. What's up, Dave? Good to see you. How are you? Welcome. So yeah, I should be on track. That seems like more than 7 days. What happened there? I think I got my dates way off. Anyway, what's up, Dave? How are you? Maybe I just missed a date. Yeah, I missed a date. This is going to be... Everything's going to be shifted. This is 04, 09, 23. There we go. Good afternoon to you, Dave. I hope you're doing well. And let's do a third note. And here we'll do new note. And that's where we'll drop this. Boom, ba-doom. Just got done doing what you are. Oh, very nice. And you decided to chillax a little bit, and then you ran into me doing more work. Well, what sermon are you preaching on, Dave? Or sermon? What passage? Okay, don't know what it's going to be called yet, but this is a start. This is going to be 2. And then I need to shift all these up, because I had left the Sunday off. Boop. Boop. Oh, there we go. I'm way ahead working on Mark 4:31 to 40 on miracles. That's awesome. Dave, did you know the first book I preached through once I got my pastoral position was the book of Mark? I started with the book of Mark. And then I did Ecclesiastes, and now I'm in Hebrews. Still have a soft spot for Mark. I also don't have classwork. Very nice. For the week of Easter. Cool. That sounds fun. Good stuff. All right, we fixed our roadmap. Good to go. We now have this in play. And let's just grab the whole section. And references, styled, paste over here so we can doctor it up. Don't crash. There we go. Looking good. Okay. So we have that. And we're also working on our paper. Cool. All right. For the paper, let's see. Here are his requirements. What's going on here? There we go. We're good. Okay. He says, response will be written with 1-inch margins, double space, 12-point Times New Roman font. Okay. So let's go. Where are margins? Well, here we'll start with double space. Let's go Times New Roman. 12-point font. And where are the margins? Come on. I know they're somewhere. I need to pull this down, I think. Ah, yes, I'm missing that little piece. There we go. Oh, no matter what I do. Oh. I didn't want it to snap like that. Let me do it up here. Design, layout. Here we are. I'm in layout. Spacing. Where are the margins? There's margins. Normal. 1 inch all the way around. So it looks like it selects that by default. 1 inch margins, double space, 12-point Times New Roman font. Please write in complete sentences, paragraphs, etc. Response will be due by the end of day, Thursday, April 22nd, 2021. Man, guys, I did not get my paper done in time. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Dave, I did 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John when I started. Hey, that's really cool. I really like 1st John. It's one of my favorites. I'm going to probably do the Gospel of John after I finish Hebrews. That's my plan, at least. That's the plan. You'll need to submit your paper in advance to both email addresses. Perfect. Okay, so we are now the proper... This is proper now. So I can make this a little smaller. Tad larger. Let's just do that. Looks good. Looks good. What's up, Jess? Can't believe you're over a year late. I know it. Don't I know it? I can't believe that either. Pretty bad. Pretty bad to be over a year late on my paper. All right. And let's just get some words down. He says, in the first half page, introduce your paper, mention who wrote the book, his background, his thesis, etc. Yes. So... For a Continuing Church, The Roots of the Presbyterian Church in America by Sean Michael Lewis. Okay. I need some tea here. Albert, I feel like I have ADHD too, Pastor. Nice. Hey, it can be a superpower if you use it right. It can be a superpower if you use it right. How you doing, Albert? Hope you're doing well. Good to see you. Been a minute. Been a minute. I hope you are well. All right. So, I'm nervous to paste this. Well, I could probably paste this. So let's tab. I could probably paste with the text only. So, in the book For a Continuing Church, The Roots of the Presbyterian Church in America by, I think he's a doctor. I'll just put Sean Michael Lewis. The author shares the background of... So you're a Presbyterian? No, this is the funny thing. I'm Baptist, Dave. But I'm taking church history through Reformed Theological Seminary, which is a Presbyterian seminary. And the professor required us to read this book in order to write a paper for the class. Isn't that funny, Dave? Whoa, hold on. Violent. This is the second time alerts are not working. Violent, thank you so much for the sub. Awesome. Let's see if this can replay. So the visual is there, but I see no audio. Hear no audio, of course. What's up, Bright Eyes? Been a minute. How are you? Yeah, it's a real shame. This is the second time I was streaming, and those alerts aren't working right. Oh, man. Always something to fix. Why isn't the audio working on them? Oh, well, I'll have to figure it out another time. Dave says, same Reformed Baptist. Yeah, that's me. But the professor, he even said, he goes, I know some of you aren't Presbyterian, but it'll be good for you anyway. And I was like, okay. It actually was interesting, though. It was interesting. Hey, Violent, thank you so much for the resub. 16 months. Incredible. Appreciate you so much. God bless. Yeah, I don't know. That is hot fire, Jess, and I don't know why the alert failed. Bummer. Okay. Albert says, really sad to heard a shooting event happen at a PCA school. They didn't even have a security guard. Oh, I hadn't heard of that. Yeah, Jess, that's not going to happen. I will not be making alert sounds. Okay. I will not be doing that. All right. In the book, For a Continuing Church, The Roots of the Presbyterian Church in America by Sean Michael Lewis, the author shares the background of the Presbyterian denomination and the events that led up to the formation of the PCA. Because he does. It's all about what happened prior. Okay, so he talks about he talks primarily about the PCUS and the PC, I think it's PCS. So the PCUS was the southern branch. PCUS was the southern branch, Presbyterian Church in the United States. The OPC came before, well, after. But then the PCUS disagreed heavily with, I think it was just the PCU. Let's see if I can find it. He obviously uses these acronyms extensively, so I should be able to find it pretty quick. But the PCUS essentially was getting more and more liberalized, and as it liberalized, finally the conservatives felt like they needed to branch off. They felt like they couldn't reform the PCUS from within. So that's essentially what happened. And the whole book is about that slow slide into liberalism and then the creation of the PCA as a result. Let's go a little bit further. A little bit further here. Man, I'm glad I took good highlights because he's going to want some detail, I think. And I'll be able to grab from these highlights. Now let's see. Oh, one thing, PCUSA. There we go. Duh. So there's the PCUS, the PCUSA, and the PCUSA was in the north and was pretty liberal. And then the PCUS was in the south and was conservative, moving liberal. And the PCUS, all book, wanted to merge with the PCUSA, at least the liberals. And those in the PCUS that were more conservative were like, no, 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 no. And then finally, it was clear they were losing the battle, if you will. And then they started the PCA. That's how the whole book goes. Dave says, you see PCUSA churches all over the Northeast, where I'm from. Hardly anyone goes to them, but they have tons of old money. That's a perfect example, Dave. And that's right. And he actually, towards the end of the book, talks about how history has treated the PCA compared to the PCUSA. And yeah, the numbers are striking. Let me see if I can't find it. Got to be close here. Because he essentially notes that God has really blessed the PCA, and the PCUSA is, like you said, basically done for. Right here. I think it's in the epilogue. Here we go. Listen to this. 40 years after the formation of the PCA, it is safe to say the fear of further division was unfounded. A lot of people said the PCA was just going to divide, and just keep branching off until there was nobody left, right? So a lot of people said this is the beginning of the end. It was unfounded. Even more, it seems clear that the founders were, in a measure, vindicated, and those who counseled remaining in the PCUS were proved to be wrong. In 2013, the PCA reported a total membership of 364,000 in 1,700 churches, a membership number that is undoubtedly low because only half the churches report their statistics annually. More than 300 mission churches were in process at that time. Meanwhile, the mainline Presbyterian Church, formed as the Presbyterian Church USA in 1983, through a finally accomplished reunion of the northern and southern branches, has dwindled from 4.25 million in 1965 to 1.84 million in 2012. Look at that. That's not even 50 years. And their membership is cut down to a third of what it was, a quarter of what it was almost. Its trajectory continues downward at a rapid pace, whereas the PCA is growing and expanding. So it's a perfect example, Dave. Perfect example. And it just goes to show the liberalizing tendency tends to kill churches, right? You get to the point where you're too progressive and you're only one small step from, why do we even bother with church anyway? And then people leave. That's what happens. So you get a little more progressive, a little more liberal, a little more progressive, a little more liberal, and then finally you're just kind of abandoning church itself. Because it's like, what are we doing? We don't need the church. So I think that's what happens. And so, yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting to note. This might be a good quote for our paper. Although, in a 5-page paper, you don't want many quotes. But I'll put it here for now. All right. In the book, For a Continuing Church, The Roots of the Presbyterian Church in America by Sean Michael Lewis, the author shares the background of the Presbyterian denomination and the events that led up to the formation of the PCA. What did he want? In the first half page, introduce your paper, mention who wrote the book, his background, his thesis, etc. Should I know more about Mr. Sean Michael Lewis? He is my professor, after all. The problem is, whatever I write in my book, he is the definitive expert on himself. So that's, that puts us at a disadvantage right away. Let's go all books. And his name might be in like a little book I have. This chapter is used with permission and adapted from the author's The Necessity of Preaching Grace for Progress and Sanctification in All for Jesus, a celebration of the 50th anniversary of Covenant Theological Seminary, Robert A. Peterson and Sean Michael Lewis. Okay. We found his name. Maybe we pull out the Michael. Oh, it's not Lewis. It's Lucas. Goodness gracious, y'all. See, these are the mistakes you can't make when you are talking about your professor. That's bad. All right, let's see. Albert, what do you mean by old money? Dave says they're often 100-plus-year-old churches with annuities, properties, and so on, so they have a lot of money. Yeah, there you go. Okay. See, the like, jets. Some of these are going to have good little bios, right? Wow, he's in a lot of stuff. Guys, he's in a lot of stuff. Guys, I think my professor is famous. Oof, I was not prepared. So this is a short little bio. Just says he is a doctor. There you go, PhD. So I'm gonna write doctor in there. Let's write doctor. And again, we're just looking for a short little bio. Sometimes there are like little books that I have called like, you know, modern theologians or different things like that, right? So sometimes you can find some really good information. It was a good book though. It was. See, here you go. Bibliotheca Sacra, somebody reviewing a book he wrote. Lucas is senior minister at First Presbyterian Church in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and an Edwardsian scholar, Jonathan Edwards. In this book, written not for scholars, but for educated lay people, he summarizes and explains the 18th century Puritan pastor scholars' theological perspectives on the Christian life. As such, Lucas is functioning in the same time as Edwards did in his, as a shepherd of the flock under his care. So that would be a decent place to start. See, the problem is some of this information might be dated, right? Bibliotheca Sacra 170, written probably a decade ago. You know what I mean? 2013. Man, I'm good. So we gotta get something more recent. This might be a situation where a good old Google search is more helpful. But even then, you'll find some dated material. You will find some dated material on ye old Google. Table Talk. Sean Michael Lewis is senior pastor of First Presbyterian Church, PCA, Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He is also author of God's Grand Design, the theological vision of Jonathan Edwards. That makes sense, considering he's an Edwardsian scholar. I didn't know Edwardsian was a thing. Did you take any classes from Frame at RTS? I'm so sad about this, Dave. Sore subject, Dave. Listen. So I started RTS. What's up, Jockmer? Good to see you. How are you? Welcome, welcome. Yeah. So I started RTS, and I'm talking with the registrar. And I was asking them which class to take first, because I had just started, right? And she says, Dr. John Frame's classes are the hardest, so don't start with those. I was like, okay, cool. So I take, like, I don't know, an intro to systematic theology class or something like that. Just an elective to get going. Well, it wasn't very long after that Dr. Frame retires. And then, not only that, all his classes get taken down and replaced by equivalent classes taught by Dr. James Anderson, who is great and also tough. But I forfeited any of my opportunity to take classes with John Frame. I'm kicking myself. It's pretty funny. But yeah, so no, I didn't take any classes with him. I met him. I went to church with him. My wife got to meet him, right? It was really cool. But never took a class with him. Goodness gracious. What can you do? What can you do? Pretty funny. All right, guys, we're already getting hung up. We can't get hung up on this. Who is Sean Michael Lucas? Who is he? We must know. Inquiring minds want to know. Man, I did not know he was such a boss. Yeah, he's all over Jonathan Edwards. That's his thing. That's his thing. Well, I'll tell you this. When we get to Jonathan Edwards in church history 2, I better pay attention and ask some good questions. Okay, this was in 2015. The book I read, he published in 2015. So, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to Google. Sean Michael Lucas. No, not Twitter. Autocomplete. Sean Michael Lucas. Dr. Sean Michael Lucas. RTS profile. Chancellor's Professor of Church History. About Dr. Lucas. Here we go. Sean Michael Lucas has taught at RTS since 2011. I want to say he used to teach at Covenant Seminary and was elected Chancellor's Professor of Church History in 2017 while continuing as Senior Minister of Independent Presbyterian Church PCA in Memphis, Tennessee. See, I'm glad I looked because these older documents say First Presbyterian Church Hattiesburg, but he's no longer there. Now he is at, let's see. He is at Independent Presbyterian Church in Memphis, Tennessee. At least that's what... Oh, and the book we read is his most recent publication. That's pretty cool. Man, he's written a lot of books. Interesting. He likes church history. Yeah, you can see on church government, or not church government, church history, one of his major areas. I love his Lordship series. So good, Dave. So I've read Doctrine of the Word of God, which I think was first. No. Doctrine of the Knowledge of God. I've read the Doctrine of the Knowledge of God, which was first, and then I've also read Doctrine of the Christian Life, which was third. I haven't read Doctrine of God, which was second, and I haven't read Doctrine of Word of God, which was fourth. So I don't know why, but I've read 1 and 3. And I've read through Doctrine of the Christian Life almost twice. Fantastic book on ethics. It was our primary textbook for my ethics class with RTS. Really, really cool. Just says source subject. Not wrong. Not wrong. That's funny. All right. Let's keep going. About Dr. Lucas. Here, let's just bring this all down into Logos. We'll paste it all down here because we need to talk about his background. So, what better place to find his background than his bio on my seminary's website? It's funny because I thought he was... I thought he was at a Covenant seminary. Shows what I know. I'm just going to check one more bio. This is off the Gospel Coalition. Let's throw this in here too. He got his PhD out of Westminster. I think it would be interesting to listen to some of his sermons. Ooh, that's an ugly color, isn't it? No background. Default. Okay. All right. Let's read what it says here. That way we're good to go. Sean Michael Lucas has taught at RTS since 2011, was elected Chancellor's Professor of Church History in 2017, while continuing as Senior Minister of Independent Presbyterian Church, Memphis, Tennessee. He graduated from Bob Jones with a bachelor's in pastoral studies in 1993 and an MA, Master's of Theology and Church History in 1994. He received the PhD from Westminster Theological Seminary in Philadelphia in 2002. Sean previously served as Senior Minister of First Presbyterian Church, Hattiesburg, Mississippi, as well as on the pastoral staffs of Community Presbyterian Church, Louisville, Kentucky, and the Covenant Presbyterian Church, St. Louis, Missouri. Let's see. While he was in St. Louis, he was faculty member and administrator at Covenant Theological Seminary, eventually serving as chief academic officer and associate professor of church history. There you go. That's the background. Not only has he preached in a number of churches in our denomination and chaired various Presbytery and General Assembly committees, he has served as moderator of Grace Presbytery and preached at the 40th PCA General Assembly in 2012. He has written or edited several books and served as co-editor with D.G. Hart of the American Reformed biography series, and the editor of the Basics of the Faith series, both with P&R Publishing. Sean and his wife Sarah have 4 children, Samuel, Elizabeth, Andrew, and Benjamin. In his free time, he enjoys running and following his beloved St. Louis Cardinals. He's mentioned sports a couple times in class, so that makes sense. All right, and then here, this bio is from Gospel Coalition, senior pastor, Independent Presbyterian Church, Memphis, Tennessee, Chancellor's Professor of Church History at RTS, author of several books, recently contributed an essay on Lutheran theology after Martin Luther to the Legacy of Luther, Reformation Trust 2016, and you can hear his sermons here, IPC Memphis. Cool, there we go. In the book For the Continuing Church, The Roots of the Presbyterian Church in America by Dr. Sean Michael Lucas. Goodness gracious. Get that wrong in the paper? You got to be kidding me. The author shares the background of the Presbyterian denomination and events that led up to the formation of the PCA. Dr. Lucas has served in important capacities in both Covenant Seminary, Covenant Theological Seminary, and Reformed Theological Seminary. His emphasis is often associated with church history, which makes him eminently qualified to write on the subject of the historical development of the PCA. In both Covenant Theological Seminary and Reformed Theological Seminary, as well as several others. Not only that, but he has served as senior pastor. Is that capitalized? No. Senior minister in more than one PCA church. In more than one PCA church. Combining this experience with his emphasis on church history makes him eminently qualified to write on the subject of the historical development of the PCA. Okay, I think that covers this. Mention who wrote the book, his background, his thesis, etc. So we've got his who wrote the book, we've got his background. Now, what's his thesis? Ooh, hello. Let's see. We got Larry. What's up, Larry? Good to see you. Pastor Channer, I love how big your Logos library is. Do you purchase certain packages or do you buy books individually? Both, Larry. But I started out building the library by purchasing the largest base packages I could afford. And I upgraded slowly over time. I think I've been investing in Logos for about a decade now, pretty close to that. And when I started, I want to say I started with Diamond or Portfolio. I can't remember. Way early on. So this would be like Logos 6 or something. And then I would save up and upgrade, save up and upgrade, save up and upgrade, etc. So slowly over time, I've built using base packages, but I also buy one-offs as well. And I will say, yes, having a large Logos library is nice, but it's the best reason to have a large Logos library is the search feature, okay? This search feature in Logos is more valuable the more resources you have, right? There's kind of two different ways of using Logos. There's obviously many ways of using Logos, but there's kind of two schools of thought, if you will. So, Larry, you're saying you like a large Logos library, which I do as well, which is why I built one. But that means that you ought to be using it for its search function. Google for books. Way more powerful because of the indexed library than, say, Kindle, where you have to search each book individually, okay? That's huge, Larry. And so that is the reason to build a large library. If you're not using the search feature often, you're not getting the value out of a large library, okay? You know, a lot of people will say they don't like buying big base packages because they contain a lot of books I'll never use. I see that as a feature, not a bug. If there are a bunch of books in there that I'll never use or don't know that I have, that means they might pop up and get a hit when I search something that I didn't expect to get. That's super valuable to me, but that's not super valuable to every user, okay? So if you're not going to be using the search function a lot, I would not recommend building a really, really large Logos library. Then you should kind of buy a la carte, okay? But Larry, I also do buy one-off books. So specific books on specific topics or from specific authors that I like, I also do. But I started out building the library with the base packages because that's the best bang for your buck in terms of value. You know, dollars, how far your dollars stretch in order to get you a lot of resources are in the base packages. And then once you've built up with those base packages, then I supplement with either individual book purchases or different things like the, what are they called? Like the little research libraries or the add-ons, different things like that. So that's kind of how I've built my library over time. Good question. All right, let's see. The Story of Scripture podcast. Hey, PT, any thoughts on using Bible Engagement Project for a discipleship program for a church? I want to say I'm familiar with that. Bible Engagement Project. I know I'm familiar with that. And my assessment was positive. So I'm going from memory here, okay? But I would happily lean into that, I think, for somebody if they were trying to use that to supplement or be a portion of a discipleship program, okay? Bible Engagement Project. Man, that sounds super familiar. I'm pretty sure I know what that is. Let's see. Dave says, so what denomination is your church part of, if any? It's independent. So it's independent Baptist, old school, not associated with any denomination. We might be part of a loose association of like Colorado Baptist churches or something like that. I think we have a couple like loose associations like that, but that's it. We're not part of any formal denomination. Terrell, what is up? Good to see you. Terrell says, what are tips of coming up with an outline for a sermon without plagiarizing? Yeah, what I typically do is read the passage, and then I try to group the concepts logically. That's what I typically default towards. So let's do it real quick. This week I'm preaching out of Hebrews 12, 18 to 29. And let's just read through it, and I'll give you some major themes, okay? For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire, and darkness, and gloom, and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet, and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. He's referring to Mount Sinai. For they could not endure the order that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. So he's basically saying, hey, you have a faith that isn't as scary as this. That's what he's essentially saying. Yeah, no problem, Terrell. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion and the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering. So already I'm seeing a contrast, right? So contrast a religion of fear with a religion of faith. Okay? Something like that. And so I might say the fearful religion is one of my main points. And I might put that verses 18 to 21. Okay, verses 18 to 21. And again, this is just a start. Let's continue. But you have come to Mount Zion, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect. He's trying to create that contrast, right? And really build up the new covenant heaven. And to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, the sprinkled blood that speaks a better word than the blood of Abel. Even this blood, Abel versus Jesus, it's a contrast, right? So I would say then, the fearful religion, let's call it the glorious religion, okay? And this would be verses 22 to 24? 24, okay? Finally, see to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. So he magnifies these two perspectives, sets them in contrast to one another, and then he transitions into some practical application. See that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape if we reject him who warns from heaven. So now he's utilizing this contrast to make an argument from the lesser to the greater. If they received such great punishment when they rejected, then we would receive even greater punishment if we rejected our glorious religion, right? That's his idea. At that time, his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken. That is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. So, Book of Hebrews is amazing, Terrell. Yes. Yeah, good. Praise God. That's awesome. Yeah, we should not be rigid, dry academics, right? This is encouraging. Exactly right. So we've got the fearful religion, the glorious religion, and then what to do in light of it, right? And what to do is in verse 25, do not refuse him who is speaking. Then there's some background material here, and then he says, therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. And thus let us offer to God acceptable worship, right? So the fearful religion, the glorious religion, something like religious practice in glory, something like that. And that would be verses 25 to 29. Okay, so now I have a rough 3-point outline. Look, this is very basic. I did it in a couple minutes. I didn't reference any materials, but that's kind of how I start. Then you just build this out with subpoints, okay? What is he talking about when he talks about the fearful religion, okay? And you'll read through this a few times, and you'll get a few subpoints out of that, right? The warning, absolutely. And that would be there as well, right? You could title this, instead of religious practice and glory, you could title it the warning, absolutely, right? The contrast, something like that. Very good. What's up, Preachable? Okay, hold on, I missed the Story of Scripture. I got to back up real quick. Story of Scripture podcast. Logos partnered with Assemblies of God to create Bible engagement using age-aligned curriculum. That's right. I was researching it. Yes. I was researching it, and then it came in some of the new base packages. Yes, you are reminding me of this now. And, what are the, they have like different... They have like different, they have interesting titles. I remember that, trying to find them. Story of Scripture podcast. I went through some of the Bible Engagement Project materials, and I thought it was good. It was a little basic, but I thought it was good, okay? So I'm not thoroughly versed on all of it, but I just went through some of it because I wanted to purchase it for myself. And so, yeah, I don't think I'd be opposed to that at all. I liked it I liked what I saw. What's up, Preachable? Hi, Pastor Tanner, watching from the UK, enjoying your content as always. Thank you so much, Preachable. God bless you. Appreciate you. Yes. Thank you for all that love and encouragement. Awesome. Now, Terrell, one final thing. Again, I just did this off the cuff, But one final thing you can do, there are a lot of resources in Logos that are about outlines, okay? I think there's a Baker outline collection. Yes, sermon outlines, okay? So what you could do, sermon outlines, blah, blah, blah. Baker outline, let's try Hebrews. See if there are any. Boom, expository outlines on Hebrews, okay? Now, this might be what you're hinting at when you say without plagiarizing, because some might consider this plagiarizing, using these Bible outline tools. But if you use them judiciously, without abusing them, I don't see any problem with utilizing these well, okay? So, you can get the Baker Outline series. There are many different books of outlines. And right here, you can see I'm in 18 to 29. He's got 12 to 29, so he's got 12 to 17 right here. And then look, boom. He's got church history, 18 to 24. And notice, look, that's kind of what we did here. We have 18 to 24 right here, our first two main points. And then he's got Christian respect after that. All right, Christian respect. And boom, you could make each of these your subpoints right there. I don't know if I'd call it respect. I called it religious practice and glory. But 26, 27, 28, 29, each of them are different points. So those could all be your subpoints. So don't hesitate, I think, to use some of these resources in Logos, these expository outlines, because they can be very, very helpful. Dave says, now you need a poem, a quote, a dash of alliteration, boom, sermon. See, Dave's got it nailed. That's exactly right. We'll do some alliteration on our points here to make them line up, right? And yeah, just find a quote, a poem on the topic, and yep, there you go. That's awesome. That's awesome, Dave. So yeah, that's what I would check out. Are they free? I don't think the expository outlines are free, but I remember it being pretty cheap for quite a few resources. And there are a lot of... There's like the Outline Bible, which I think does a great job of putting together outlines for sections. Right here, you can see the contrast. Two mountains are contrasted. Mount Sinai, Mount Zion, right? This will preach right there. The caution, okay? Look, you put the warning. He calls it the caution in the Outline Bible. Very nice. You nailed it. There's our sermon right there. Or this is our sermon right here. So you can use that outline if you'd like. You can also find good outlines just in Bible introductions, Bible background commentaries. And there is also... Yeah, you nailed it, Terrell. Exactly. What's up, Neva? Good to see you. Greetings and salutations from Kansas. Yes, very nice to see you, Neva. And not only the Outline Bible, but there are also... Oh, I want to say... There was a recent resource. Oh, I love the outlines that are in the Leadership Ministries, something or other, resources. It's like Leadership, there it was. It's like Leadership Ministries International or something like that. These commentaries right here. These are not cheap. The Preacher's Outline and Sermon Bible. Let's go Hebrews. I love the Preacher's Outline and Sermon Bible. They have great outlines. So this is 12:14. We want to get down to 12:18 to 29. Lots of good stuff in the Preacher's Outline and Sermon Bible, but I will say this is a more expensive resource. It is. I shelled out for it. Here you go. Look at this. The Great Motivation, the Two Approaches to God, the Old and the New Covenants, 18 to 24. The first or old approach, the Old Covenant, was external worship, was to a holy distant God, was a reluctant, fearful approach for the people and for the leader Moses. I mean, boom, there's your, if you want, there's your main point and your subpoints. And here's the thing, if you're going to utilize a resource like this and you're worried about plagiarism, just tell them. Just say, like right at the beginning, you know, I've done this before. Right at the beginning, you could say, I'm relying heavily on Leadership Ministries Worldwide, and their outline for Hebrews chapter 12, verses 18 to 29 is excellent. So I'm utilizing their outline. Boom, you say that, you're not plagiarizing anymore, and now you have a great outline. Look at that, the new approach, the new covenant. Boom, 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 boom. There's your main point, there's your subpoints. You don't even have to reference any of their stuff in terms of like the content down here in the commentary. You can flesh these out however you see fit. You see the spiritual and heavenly approach in worship. You go to the text, you find it, and then you can go say, oh, I'm going to go do a word study. And then boom, now you're in your lexicon, you're looking up a word, and you can drop that in your sermon and spend 5 minutes talking about the background of that word and why it means what it means, etc. Right? There's so much content available for it's kind of a joke, actually. Dave's point is well taken. Now you need a poem, a quote, a dash of alliteration, boom, a sermon. With the tool of Logos Bible software, it is so easy to write sermons in a fraction of the time that they used to take. Now, I do want to say this. That does not mean you should be lazy, right? But what it does mean, I read this verse all the time, to whom much is given, much will be required, right? Like, we're going to answer for this. But you're responsible, as a good steward of your time that God has given you, you're responsible to use your time well to write a sermon well. You see what I mean? And yeah, you could waste a bunch of time doing certain types of research or things like that, but is that really being a good steward, right? That's how I think of it. So there are many, many good ways to get good outlines, and start with those as a framework. Really good question, Terrell. Thanks. Neva says, or you could use ChatGPT to write your sermon. I know a lot of people are talking about that. It's a big problem in some circles. I had a friend of mine say, don't know how true this is, but I had a friend of mine say that ChatGPT spells essentially the end of technical writing. That technical writing as a field is basically done, because ChatGPT can essentially write technical papers or, technical content way better than humans can, and way faster. So kind of interesting. Terrell says, I'm not a pastor though. I was asking if I want to share the word of God. Ah, perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect example. Very nice. Preachable says, what helps me in preaching is prayer and allowing God to speak. If you read and study daily, the Lord will speak through you. Thompson Chain is good as it helps you in without anyone's words. I like that too, Preachable. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm finding these days I reference commentaries less and less. I still like referencing them from time to time, but you're 100% correct, right? Power of the Spirit is going to give fresh insight and intuition to you to help you write a good sermon. That's great. Thanks for sharing, Preachable. Neva says, I had it right one just for fun. There you go. There you go. Pastor Tanner, you are such a force of encouragement. I'll take that. I don't know if that was tongue in cheek. I don't know if you were being sarcastic, but I'll take it. All right, let's go back to our paper, and we also need to talk about his thesis. Reading the broad strokes of the book gives the distinct impression that it is primarily liberal influence within existing Presbyterian denominations that drove the... Reading the broad strokes of the book gives the distinct impression that it's primarily liberal influence within existing Presbyterian denominations that drove the impetus. Feels like a double dip. That was the impetus for the establishment of the PCA. PCUS, conservative PCUS ministers did not desire to separate, but instead felt that their hands were forced in order to preserve the distinct gospel emphasis No, in order to preserve, it was actually three things. The gospel, let me look this up real quick. Neva, have a great day, sir. You as well, Neva. Thanks for swinging by. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Just says it was for real. Oh, well then I appreciate the encouragement. Cool. Three issues right here. Southern Presbyterian conservatives have centered their message on the three issues from the earliest coalescence of their dissent. They wanted to maintain a church at first, the PCUS, and then continuing church that would affirm biblical authority, the reformed evangelicalism of the Westminster Standards, and the evangelistic passion of the Great Commission, right? So, but instead felt their hands were forced in order to preserve the distinctives. Reading the broad strokes of the book gives the distinct impression that it is primarily liberal influence within existing Presbyterian denominations that was the impetus for the establishment of the PCA. Conservative PCUS ministers did not desire to separate, but instead felt their hands were forced in order to preserve, I don't want to use distinct and then distinctive, in order to preserve Christ's church. Dr. Lucas puts it plainly when he says, and I'm not going to put footnotes because I'm not going to say puts it plainly. Dr. Lucas identifies the three primary issues. I'll put they wanted to maintain a church myself. Dr. Lucas identifies the three things conservatives wanted to maintain: biblical authority, and I can start my quote here. And I want minimal quotes because it's only a 5-page paper. Okay, I think this is a good intro, right? A good intro. Because again, he says, introduce in your paper. Mention who wrote the book, his background, his thesis, etc. Okay, so what do we got? In the book For a Continuing Church, The Roots of the Presbyterian Church in America by Dr. Sean Michael Lucas. The author shares the background of the Presbyterian denomination and the events that led up to the formation of the PCA. Dr. Lucas has served in important capacities in both Covenant Theological Seminary and Reformed Theological Seminary, as well as several others. Not only that, but he has served as senior minister of more than one PCA church. Combining this experience with his emphasis on church history makes him eminently qualified to write on the subject of the historical development of the PCA. Reading the broad strokes of the book gives the distinct impression that it is primarily liberal influence within existing Presbyterian denominations that was the impetus for the establishment of the PCA. Conservative PCUS ministers, and it's hard because it's not just PCUS, it's also PCUSA. I'll just put a Presbyterian here. Conservative Presbyterian ministers did not desire to separate, but instead felt that their hands were forced in order to preserve Christ's church. Dr. Lucas identifies three things as a bad word. Dr. Lucas identifies three distinctives? Yes. And that's different. I was trying to not use the word distinct. You know what? I'm going to go with distinctives. And then I'm going to fix distinct back here. Gives the impression. I don't need distinct. Gives the impression that it's primarily liberal influence within existing Presbyterian denominations that was the impetus for the establishment of the PCA. Conservative Presbyterian ministers did not want to desire to separate, but instead felt that their hands were forced in order to preserve Christ's church. Dr. Lucas identifies three distinctives conservatives wanted to maintain. biblical authority, the Reformed evangelicalism of the Westminster Standards, and the evangelistic passion of the Great Commission. And this is page 313, 314. Now, I'll just throw that in. Cool. Well, that's paragraph 1 done. And I might stop there with the paper and move on to the sermon, okay? Because now, honestly, the rest is easy. I know that sounds odd, right? Because I only did the first half page. It's only the introduction. But that, to me, is... I had to do more research, digging, etc. In the rest, cite the relevant examples. Who were the significant figures, the organizations? What were the major issues in the formation? Like, that's going to be slightly less difficult, I think. And then this last section, 3 pages of what do I make of the story? What's my opinion? How does it contribute? Right? Like, boom. That's going to be simple. That's going to be simple. So you guys kind of can tell where I'm going. I'm not going to write the full paper right here. But I wanted to get it going, and I'll just finish it tonight after stream, right? So that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to do. Let's shift gears now and focus on my sermon, okay? And Terrell already got us going. Terrell already got us going on the sermon. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. So again, for you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest, and the sound of a trumpet and a voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further messages be spoken to them. For they could not endure the order that was given. If even a beast touches the mountain, it shall be stoned. Indeed, so terrifying was the sight that Moses said, I tremble with fear. But you have come to Mount Zion, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to innumerable angels in festal gathering, and to the assembly of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, and to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks better word than the blood of Abel. See to it that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape if we reject him who warns from heaven. At that time his voice shook the earth, but now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken, that is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken remain. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. Now, I originally had said I want this to be a 2-parter, part 1 and part 2. And I think I can actually do that. If I focus on the fearful religion, verses 18 to 21, this time, and then next time I focus on the glorious religion, verses 22 to 24, I now have a 2-parter, okay? And I think that makes sense because it's a clear contrast, right? It's a clear contrast. So I'll set up the contrast and I'll say, hey, these next 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about a contrast, but this time I want to focus on Mount Sinai, okay? And so I can take verses 18 to 21 primarily, and then I won't talk about the differences with Mount Zion, right? And so I want to call this a tale of 2 mountains. And we got this idea from one of the outlines we were looking at, right? Boom. Perfect. What's up, Ray? Good to see you. How are you? Hello, all. Glad I was able to catch you live again. Yeah, thanks for swinging by. Hope you're doing well. Just working on the sermon now. We made some good progress on the paper. I gave people kind of the background of establishment of the PCA, all that stuff. And now we're just working on the sermon. So having fun. Hope you're doing well. It's good to see you. By the way, I want to give a little plug here. Okay? Please do not feel obligated at all. But we have a Patreon. And the reason I wanted to give a plug about the Patreon is today I recorded a vlog for the first time in months. Okay? In months. On the Patreon, I tried to do a weekly vlog. I haven't done a good job of it in the past, but I'm getting back after it, okay? I enjoyed it. And so I'm going to try to keep those vlogs up. If you want to stay caught up with me a little bit more, try to either join the Patreon or join the Discord, okay? Now look at the different levels on the Patreon because not every level gets access to the vlog, okay? Each level has a different thing. So, but anyway, check out the Patreon or the Discord if you're interested. Appreciate all the love and support. We are trying to do this long term, right? This is something that, biblical research online, Logos Bible software, really the trajectory of my future as not only a pastor, but as somebody who aspires to write books and things like that. All of this is going to stem out of Pastor Tanner Ministries, right? That's what we're focusing in on. So if you're interested in supporting us in that way, check out the Patreon link. It's in almost all of our videos, okay? But I don't plug it that often, so I think people don't know that much about it, So it is there. It is there. And again, we're trying to be in this for the long haul, guys. So appreciate all your love and support. You guys are a great encouragement to me. Thank you. All right. So, A Tale of Two Mountains, I think, is fitting, right? And, of course, it's playing off A Tale of Two Cities. And, yeah, it's Mount Sinai in verses 18 to 21. And then it's Mount Zion. And I wouldn't have called it that, but in verse 22, he says explicitly Mount Zion. Okay, so that's a clear comparison. Mount Sinai versus Mount Zion. Okay, and now I'm gonna have to get creative if I'm gonna do this in a two-parter, because I need to preach 18 through 21 in a way that does not steal all the thunder from 22 to 25. Okay. At that time, his voice shook the earth. So I need. Let's go Mount Sinai. And I need verses 18 to 21, but also 26a, 26a, and then next week, 26b. But now he has promised, yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens. This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken. That is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken remain. Very interesting. This verse 27, where does this go? This phrase, yet once more, indicates the removal of things that are shaken. That is, things that have been made, in order that the things that cannot be shaken may remain. Very interesting contrast. So there might be a 27a here as well. Therefore, let us be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, and thus let us offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. I think the consuming fire aspect is very, very important. Verse 29. Okay. So these are kind of my fodder. These are the verses from which I will glean material in order to preach on. But it's interesting. I essentially want to preach something like this. In what ways does the Sinaitic covenant still apply for us? Something like that. Okay, because we are supposed to learn something here. And to me, the trick is our God is a consuming fire. Note that that's true on both covenants. Okay? He's telling us, let's be grateful for receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. Why? For our God is a consuming fire. That's a very interesting justification, because he's been arguing this contrast. Heavenly versus earthly, shaken versus unshaken, all this type of stuff. But then in both cases, the reason to do the thing is that our God is a consuming fire. That doesn't change. Okay? So our God is a consuming fire. This is the consistent driver, if that makes sense, right? The fact that our God is a consuming fire is the consistent driver for us in both covenants. Okay, so that's important. Now there is a contrast being set up, but it's onward and upward. It's farther up and farther in, right? It is not replacement necessarily. It's as though you need to move through the earthly in order to achieve the heavenly. But you have come to Mount Zion. Let's see. The mediator of a new covenant, the sprinkled blood that speaks better word than the blood of Abel. See that you do not refuse him who is speaking. For if they did not escape when they refused him who warned them on earth, much less will we escape if we reject who warns from heaven. Yeah, verse 25, very important. It's almost as though you need to move through the old in order to reach the new. I'm reminded of modern evangelistic practices. Law, then gospel, right? Not saying we have to do that, but this is a path we could go down. Dave says, I wish I could support, but poor pastor here. Oh, I understand, Dave. And don't you worry about it. Don't you worry about it. I appreciate all the love, though. Appreciate all the love. I want to plug it because there are some people there who have that ability, but I am not trying to turn you guys upside down and empty out your pockets. Okay, there's no desire for that from me, if that makes sense. I appreciate you, Dave. What's up, Keith? All right, Keith says, hey, Pastor Tanner, I'm proud to announce to you that I'm finally doing my Master's of Ministry in Pastoral Leadership. Thanks for the encouragement over the months. That's awesome, Keith. Fantastic. Well done. Have you started any of your classes yet? That's great. Great news. Very well done. Yeah, hang in there, persevere. It's not easy, but it's worth it, right? God calls us to do hard things. Okay, so we kind of have a start, right? We have a start. And I feel like this is kind of introductory. Our God is a consuming fire, and that being the consistent driver in both covenants, okay? And we've already got our application for next week's sermon. It's right here. Offer to God acceptable worship with reverence and awe. Receive a kingdom. Be grateful, right? Verse 28 is all the application for next week. We're going to have to be a little creative about our application this week, right? This kind of sets everything up. And then this sets everything up, and then we can focus in on some good application out of these verses. Again, we're going to spend the majority of our time in 18 to 21. Reference 26, reference 27, 29 is going to be the link that connects the two sermons. And so this will be in the introduction. But we're going to spend some time in 26a and 27a, but the majority of our time in 18 to 21. So let's get a passage guide going. Boom. Here we go. All right. Got a passage guide going. I have a couple of collections that I use in my passage guide. The first is all translations. Okay. This is every book in my library that has the type Bible. Okay. And here's why I do this. I like to reference a variety of translations, and there are even some translations, for example, that commentators do. Okay, so a commentator will actually have written a commentary, but they will do their own translation. And oftentimes, Logos will categorize this as type Bible. And so you can see right here, commentary, critical, experimental, and practical from Jameson Fawcett Brown. Well, they actually have their own translations. Okay, we can reference those. We can look at those. All right, so I have this separated out, and one of the things I like to do is just go to various Bible translations at the start. Now, this is a little bit messy when you do it via collections. Let me show you how I do it. So, like, this is what it's doing is it's searching in all of my type Bibles for where these verses pop up. So they might pop up in footnotes. They might pop up, anywhere. And so you need to recognize that just because something got a hit doesn't mean it has something valuable in it. So, for example, here, Commentary on the Gospels, Volume 3, St. Luke, text. The text portion is the reason this is showing up as type Bible. So this guy translated Luke himself in his commentary. That's actually not going to be helpful to me because he's translating Luke and I'm in Hebrews. Why did it give me a hit? Well, because in one of the footnotes, he references this verse. Okay, so I shouldn't click that one. All right, I shouldn't click that one. Dave says, gotta run, dinner time, God bless. God bless you as well. Thanks for hanging out so much, Dave. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Take care. Interstellar Synthesis. What are your top favorite church history resources? Oh, good question, Interstellar. Thanks for swinging by. We are required to read Justo Gonzalez, and I actually don't think he's in Logos. The Story of Christianity. I really like it. I have now read hundreds of pages in him, and he's so readable. You can just read the way he talks about it, just very encouraging. So I've got to recommend Justo Gonzalez. Very, very good writer. And I'm pretty sure he's like a standard one to reference, but with good reason. He's fantastic. Let me think. Another one I like is it's a historical theology book. And I like it because it's by Greg Allison. And he talks about, it's this, historical theology and introduction. He follows, I like it because it's a great companion volume to Grudem. And what you can do is when you're researching something in Grudem and you've got this systematic understanding, now Greg Allison talks about historically how those doctrines developed. That's very, very handy, right? So I like this work as well as Justo Gonzalez. But if you're just going to sit and read, Justo Gonzalez is really great. Big fan. Yeah, good question. Where were we? Okay. So, like, the commentary on Revelation, I'm not going to open that because I'm in Hebrews. But some of these translations, right? Complete Jewish Bible, okay? It's referencing the Tanakh, but it's complete. It might have the New Testament in it. Now, it only gives you a few hits here, okay? It only gives you a few hits, but it does look like it goes clear to Revelation. So I'm going to click this button down here, Search Complete Jewish Bible. Now it's going to open over here. Now this is every reference in the Complete Jewish Bible to these verses. And what, if you click right here now, Complete Jewish Bible, it will now open for you to the section, okay? So now I'm exactly where I needed to. So it's just a few clicks, right? I want to check the Complete Jewish Bible. I'm going to click search. It brings it up over here, and then I just click this. And because my notes and my passage guide are keyed to these verses, it automatically opens this resource to these verses. So now I just need to close that, and boom, I have the Complete Jewish Bible, and I can look at their translation. So how do they translate things? Complete Jewish Bible. For you have not come to a tangible mountain, to an ignited fire, to darkness, to murk, to a whirlwind. Notice how different that is, right? Verse 18. For you have not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire and darkness and gloom and a tempest. Okay? Very interesting to see this comparison. To the sound of a shofar. Oh, I happen to know this is the Hebrew word for horn, right? It's one of those big horns that they blow, okay? And the sound of a trumpet, all right? Notice here that in the Greek, there's no shofar here, right? This says kai salpingas, kai salpingas. And yet, it's translated here, shofar, right? So I could dig into that word a little bit, just trumpet, and called a bugle sometimes, but not necessarily associated with a shofar in particular. Notice the ESV never translates it shofar, but because we're in the Complete Jewish Bible, they want to call it a shofar. That's very interesting, right? So I want to note that in verse 19. So let's grab all three of these verses. And I want to highlight shofar here because I think that might be relevant for us to look at. Let's do like a light red. Yeah, that's pleasing. So that's something to look into, right? I like the phrasing tangible mountain here. Very intriguing. Ignited fire, darkness, murk, whirlwind. The sound of a shofar, the voice whose words made the hearers beg that no further message be given to them, for they couldn't bear what was being commanded them. If even an animal touches the mountain, it is to be stoned to death. And so terrifying was the sight that Moshe, right? So again, the complete Jewish Bible. I am quaking with dread. What a different way of putting it, right? I am quaking with dread. So very, very interesting. And I just like to reference several different versions. You can do your standard ones. Again, so here's Christian Standard Bible. Again, search Christian Standard Bible. Then all you have to do is click Christian Standard Bible right here. It'll open to your passage. Okay. For you have not come to what could be touched, to a blazing fire, to darkness, gloom, and storm, to the blast of a trumpet, to the sound of words. Those who heard it begged that not another word be spoken to them, for they could not bear what was commanded. If even an animal touches the mountain, it must be stoned. The appearance was so terrifying that Moses said, I am trembling with fear. Okay? So a standard translation. But I like to get into some of the different ones, right? Some of the ones that you wouldn't always reference, because I often find that they expand the idea a little bit in a way that I like. So the Emphasized Bible, right here. And interesting. Oh, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Emphasized Bible. This is an older version of like a... Yeah, very interesting. This is like an older version of almost a like not annotated Bible, but there's the one that expanded Bible, something like that. Anyway, let's give it a read and see what he says. For ye have not approached unto a searching and scorching fire, and gloom and mist and tempest. Okay? And a trumpet's peal, and a sound from things spoken, from which they who heard excused themselves, lest there should be added to them a word. For they could not bear that which was being enjoined. And should a beast be touching the mountain, it shall be stoned. And so fearful was that which was showing itself, Moses said, I am terrified, and do tremble. Okay. Let's keep going. The expanded Bible. Oh, that's what I was just talking about. Let's give that a go. And again, I just find it helpful to reference a few different translations, right? So this one, we can probably go right there. You have not come to a mountain, something, literally something. You have not come to something, a more literal rendering in the original language, allowing the reader to see why translations make varying choices. How cool. Okay. Then what is this? Comment briefly provides historical, cultural, theological, or other explanatory information to help readers better understand a verse or a passage. Okay. Well, that's helpful. A description of Mount Sinai when Israel received the law. See, look at that. You see the passage explicitly says Mount Zion, but it does not explicitly say Mount Sinai. Yet the way it refers to it, if you know the cross-reference, then you understand why it uses that explanation. Okay, so you've not come to a mountain or something, and let's see. For you have not come to what may be touched. And that's where they're saying this something is in play. So it looks like it's implied, right? So ugar, gar is a postpositive. It means for or because. And then u is a not, right? So for you have not. And then here is, they translate you have come. It's a perfect active indicative. Okay. And then here, to touch or to handle. And burn. And so, yes, it's basically implied, right? I do like ESV's translation here. For you have not come to that which may be touched or that which may be handled. Okay. So they say, you have not come to something. I don't like that. So they say it literally is something, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Okay. Description of Mount Sinai when it received the law. This is helpful. Verse 18. So let's throw some cross references here. And we have two cross references. Boom. Got it right there. Right there. You've not come to darkness or gloom and storms, a whirlwind. You have come to the noise of a trumpet. You have not come to the noise of a trumpet or to the sound of a voice. Literally words. Like the one the people of Israel heard and begged not to hear another word. Fearing God's wrath, Israel asked Moses to mediate God's message. So all these cross references are helpful. So let's just grab them all. Boom. For they did not want to hear, could not bear or endure the command. If anything, even an animal touches the mountain, it must be put to death with stones. I think that's funny that they could not bear that. It's very, very interesting. Right? Like that's what the word says. So I'm not critiquing it. It's just interesting to me. Indeed, what they saw was so terrible or terrifying that Moses said, I am shaking or trembling with fear. So good. We got a bunch of cross references here. Boom. In play. So, I could go through, we could multiply different translations, but that's essentially how to utilize a collection like that. Now, I do a similar thing with, and I need to flesh this out more, but this is text and translation tier list that I've put in place, and this is looking for textual variants. Okay. So it looks like there are textual variants. And let's see them. Verse 18a is a textual variant. And verse 20. So there are two textual variants here. 18a, actually 18a and 18b. So what can be touched versus a mountain that can be touched. So this. Ore. The mountain is in some manuscripts. Okay. So let me put this down here. Variants. Mountain. In 18a. Some manuscripts. And even early ones. P46. Wow. Oh, no. The earliest ones don't have it. That makes more sense. Yeah. Claremontanus. And then some 9th century uncials, majority, etc. Yep. So he explicitly just calls it an insertion. The insertion of Ore, mountain, was adapted from 1220 to 22. Yeah, it's because he talks about Mount Sinai. This interpolation at this juncture distracts from the point that the author is about to introduce a contrast between physical features of the events pertaining to the inauguration of the Old Covenant, those things that can be touched, and the spiritual elements of the New Covenant. It is too limiting to specify only the mountain as that which can be touched. Nonetheless, it has become the insertion in most translations. Yep. So that makes perfect sense. And then difference of opinion here, gloom and storm versus darkness and storm. Ooh, and that's very interesting. Here, P46 breaks off from Sinai Atticus. It is difficult to determine which reading here is the original, exactly, because P46 is young, but it's differentiated. The variant may be the result of a scribal conformity to Deuteronomy 4:11, which describes the storm cloud in which God was enshrouded on Mount Sinai as being Skados, Naphos, Thwela, dark, black, stormy. The Westcott and Hort reading could be the result of scribal conformity to the Hebrew text of Deuteronomy 4:11, which uses gloom. On balance, the Westcott-Hort reading has slightly better testimony. Okay. So this one I don't think is terribly relevant. It's just good to know it could be either gloom and storm or darkness and storm. So Zapho or Scato. That's it. So, yeah. So good to know it's a toss-up. Okay, and then finally 1220. The animal will be stoned, or the animal will be stoned or thrust through with an arrow. Okay, this definitely looks like it is something they added to, right? The variant reading, slimly supported and clearly spurious. Yeah, there you go. Displays scribal expansion borrowed from Exodus 19:13. This reading appears in the Basil minuscule, 12th century, and was included by Erasmus in his Greek text when he used this manuscript. Thereafter, it was included in the TR, followed by the King James and the New King James. So, good to know. And or thrust through with an arrow. Verse 20. Added. Pretty strong testimony to add. So, again, interesting ones. I'm not going to go through all these right here. Oftentimes, these details are of limited utility when it comes to the actual preaching. So that's important and helpful to note. It really is. So let's minimize that. Let's move on to Study Bible. Also, a sleeper resource that you may not know about, the Dake Annotated, is pretty cool. Often some of the lists they have in there are sweet. Okay. See, look at this. 10 facts about Mount Sinai. That's awesome. Right? Just something right there. 8 things in heaven. Sweet. And then they have some verses. And you know what the verses are? They're very interesting. Talks about the Greek. Now, it's an older resource, so you can see they use Strong's numbers. But, man, that's pretty cool. Blepo. Apostrepho. To turn back. To turn oneself away. Translated. Turn away from. The Dake's Annotated is pretty sweet. And again, I think it's an older resource. 1997. First published in 1963. Yeah. I probably need to do a video on Dake Annotated. Alrighty. One you guys know I like is... Where is it? The CSB Disciples. Because it essentially puts together the material in a systematic theological form. So you have last things, salvation, the church, last things, creation, worship, prayer. You can see all of these. If I wanted to take my sermon in a systematic direction, all of these are viable topics. I think that's helpful. Interstellar, I like my old resources. Struggling with getting with the times now that I'm in seminary. I know exactly what you mean, Interstellar. I know exactly what you mean. A lot of the older resources are really good. They really are. Great for study. So, for example, just glancing at this, I see Last Things, Salvation Church, Last Things. Last Things is twice. So if I wanted to take this sermon in a systematic direction, I know Last Things is certainly a viable topic because I can get there out of 22 to 24 and 25 to 29. Okay, I also have church, salvation, creation, worship, prayer. So these are all one-offs. If I'm looking for application, I can grab one of these other topics. Okay, prayer, verses 28 and 29. Okay, worship. Oh, that makes sense. So I love going to the CSB Disciples to get systematic theological insight. And it's actually a shame because to me, the ESV Systematic Theology Study Bible, which you would think would be great at this, is less good at this. Often it doesn't have references. So I'm in 12, 18 to 29. Nothing, right? Its last reference is 12, 5 to 17. So great if I'm preaching through that section, but it doesn't even have anything for my current section. And not only that, it only highlights one systematic theological idea. CSB Disciples is better for me. Now, it goes more in depth into it, so if it's what you want, if you want to dig deeper, then great. But oftentimes for what I'm trying to do, farm ideas and get concepts going, the CSB Disciples just does better. Let's, I want to start heading towards application now. So let's hit up the Fire Bible and see what we get here. Mountain that can be touched. Okay, here's the emphasis on Sinai. The awesome circumstances surrounding the giving of God's law at Mount Sinai are contrasted with the features of the gospel, the good news of forgiveness, a renewed relationship with God, and eternal life through faith in Jesus Christ. The Old Covenant law contained many unattainable standards, fearful warnings, and severe penalties. Christ followers do not have such a threatening covenant. Yet, the consequences of turning away from the gospel are far more dreadful than were the consequences of rejecting the law, because receiving Christ is the only way to true and personal life lasting with God. This is great, right? This already puts me in the direction that I might want to go. So I can already get a sense of what I need to talk about. I'm going to be talking about verse 29 and opening with this idea of the contrast of the covenants, okay? And the fact that in both covenants, God is a consuming fire, okay? Then I can talk about 26a or 27a. Well, let's see. Probably 25. I need to use verse 25 to talk about the argument from the lesser to the greater, because I'm going to be spending the majority of this sermon, this first one, talking about negative aspects, talking about judgment, talking about the life to come, all that type of stuff. So if I'm going to be doing that, I need 25 to set up the contrast. I want to make a Canvas document now. It feels like time for the Canvas document. New Canvas. And we'll call it A Tale of Two Mountains, Part 1. And Hebrews 12, 18 to 29. Let's see. Oh! Edgemark, come on. Yes. Appreciate you. Fantastic. Thank you, Edgemark. The notifications aren't playing sounds. I don't know what's going on. The visual's there, but the sounds aren't playing, so I don't know. Need to get that fixed. What's up, Edgemark? Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you. 18 months. That's really great. Appreciate all the love and support. Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you. Tale of Two Mountains, Part 1. Scuffed stream. He's not wrong, y'all. He's not wrong. Tale of Two Mountains, Part 1. Boom. And what do we do? Just going to drop all of these facts, figures, arrows, etc. into here. And we're putting this thing together. We are putting this thing together. We got our intro. I use yellow arrows here. And Hebrews 12, 18 to 29. Boom. Boom. Now, I will be preaching this on the 2nd, which means I don't need a secondary verse because we'll be doing communion. So, boom, good to go. And we'll think about shortly. We'll think about our proposition. But where I want to start again, we're contrasting, right? So we need to understand his argument. So I need to talk about verse 29, right? So I kind of want to open up with, I think it was Andy Crouch, Unhitch the Old Testament. And I just want to talk generally. Just want to talk about how trying to make sense of the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament is challenging. And then I can reference I can also reference theonomy. I have a book from Bonson. And by this standard. And I think he says in exhaustive detail at some point. No. Might not be in that book. Maybe the word detail. And there's like there's a theonomy statement that's really strong, even though it doesn't work itself out this way. But it's like the application of all of God's law to all of life in exhaustive detail, or something like that. Excuse me, sorry. Let me I'm gonna search in all books real quick, just the phrase exhaustive detail. Near Bonson. This is an example of a search that can be very valuable when you have a large library. Edgemark. So God is all-knowing, but is Jesus? No, right? It's very interesting. Yeah, you're getting into something that's very, very interesting. People talk about the difference between his human nature and his divine nature. And one thing that I think would be helpful to look into at this point, Edgemark, is the economic trinity. These are the roles they choose to take. And so while he was here on earth, most theologians and scholars would say that economically, right, that Jesus chose to withhold his omniscience for part of his, at least not to exercise it. Maybe it's not that it went away, but he chose not to exercise it for his time on earth. So that's why he says things like, only the Father knows that, the Son doesn't know that, etc. So here we go. This is the quote I was looking for. when Bahnsen speaks of the abiding validity of the law in exhaustive detail. Okay, the abiding validity of the law in exhaustive detail. Okay, and again, this is the sort of search that when you have a large Logos library is super advantageous. I knew that there was a quote surrounding Bahnsen about the exhaustive detail of the law being applied. So I searched exhaustive detail in quotes near Bahnsen in all of my books. And notice I got actually 6 hits, right? And I remember this is where I'd read it because I've read Doctrine of the Christian Life. We were talking about that earlier. But notice there are many other resources that reference that same thing, right? So, yeah. Interstellar, do you reference the Reformation commentary on Scripture or ACCS much to get a historic perspective? Have you found value in those? Interstellar, I have found much more value in the ACCS. Yes, I do, but I reference the ACCS way more than the Reformation commentary. I want to like the Reformation commentary, but I find it to be too predictable too often. And maybe it's because it's closer to our day and age. I still like it, but ACCS is something that I feel like Protestants need more of, whereas I feel like Protestants already, even in the modern commentaries, do Reformation theology pretty well, right? Especially because Reformed authors typically make up a lot of the church in its modern sense, if that makes sense. So yeah, good question. So anyway, I just wanted to show you guys that search. I think that was a valuable search. So I'm going to talk about the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament being challenging, and then I'm going to talk about these two positions. I don't know if this was Andy Stanley or Andy Crouch, but he talked about unhitching the Old Testament, and a bunch of conservatives, evangelicals, etc., attacked him for saying that, using that phrase. But again, it just goes to illustrate the difficulty, right? And then I can talk about here, a contrast is set up. But we ought not to miss the similarities as well. And because we ought not to miss the similarities, then I will reference verse 29. Verse 29, and then verse 27. So I'll reference verse 29, then verse 27, and this is going to give... Wait, not 27. No, verse 25. Verse 29, and then verse 25. So verse 29 establishes that the God is the same. Verse 25 establishes a from the lesser to the greater style of argument, right? So I'll just put those in here. Same God. Lesser to greater. And I'm even now thinking about a picture through Sinai to Zion. That picture comes to mind. I don't know if it's correct. Edgemark says, oh, I hadn't heard of that. I'll look into it, because if that were true, there would be nothing funnier to me than people wanting to discuss theology with Jesus in heaven and Jesus being like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I see. Oh, cool. Unhitch the Old Testament. Perfect. Thank you, Edgemark. Ah, and this one's by Michael Kruger. Yeah, this is perfect. And it's about Andy Stanley. Yep, nailed it. Andy Stanley. That's exactly what I needed. Thank you, Edgemark. Yeah, good article. I will post this in the chat. And that's a good article. That's helpful. Thank you, Edgemark. Perfect. Interstellar reminds me of the discussion of, is God in hell? To say no is to deny his omnipresence. I think it comes down to how God chooses to relate to hell, just as Jesus chose to relate to the world. I think that makes a lot of sense, Interstellar. And here's the other thing. We need to have some theological humility, okay? There are things we don't know. We just need to frankly admit that. There are things that it's hard, because when you get into systematics especially, the human tendency is to try to define everything into finer and finer distinctions. That can be valuable to a degree, but we also need to have some humility and say, yeah, there's a lot of things we just don't know. And we should stop being so dogmatic about those things that we just don't know. You know what I mean? So yeah, both and for me there. Okay. So same God to, and then the lesser to the greater argument. And then here's where I can say two parts. I want to say something like, it would be easy to preach on just Mount Zion and the differences. After all, that's what the text does. But because we see this relationship, I actually want to preach two parts. One on the Sinaitic aspect of God, and then one on the Zion aspect of God, because both are true. So I'm kind of just setting up the justification for why I'm treating this in a two-part. So that's the full intro. And now, what's our proposition? I don't know yet. I don't know what our proposition is yet. For you've not come to what may be touched, a blazing fire in darkness and gloom and a tempest. Because the new covenant is more glorious, we ought to handle it with even greater reverence. Something like that. Something like that. Because that's his argument, from the lesser to the greater. And then this allows me to tap into Sinai themes while still recognizing, hey, we're in the new covenant. Perfect. Perfect. Okay, that's a perfect stopping point, guys. I've gone 2 hours almost on the dot. It's a perfect stopping point. We've got lots of stuff we can dig into, and we've set ourselves up to do a good two-parter here. Full intro done, and now we just got to flesh it out, right? This proposition might change, but all we have to do now is dig more in depth into verses 18 through 21 and start pulling out some key themes and ideas, and those will establish our main points. And then we also need to reference verse 26a and 27a potentially as well. So boom, there we go. Well, hey guys, I had a really good time with you. It was very effective too. Very efficient, very effective. We got the paper going, and I appreciate all your guys' love and support. Thank you for the subs. And not only that, the paper will be fairly easy, trivial to finish. And then not only that, but we got the sermon going. And I think we're well on our way to a very, very strong sermon. Appreciate you all very much. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. And yeah, it was good to get a stream in early this week. A little earlier than I normally do. But yeah, I think that was good and helpful. And by earlier, I mean earlier in the day. We did afternoon instead of evening. Edgemark, have a good one, boss. Till next time. Yes, thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Appreciate all the love and support. And yeah, like I said, pushing hard to graduate. Once we graduate, should be seeing a lot more of us here on YouTube, here on Twitch, etc. So thanks so much for hanging out. Have a fantastic week. God bless all of you, and we will see you next time. Okay, take care. God bless.